everyone, Candice here, and I don't have any Australian accent tips for you today. Instead, I have some Australian travel tips for you. In this video, I am going to talk about alcohol and the drinking culture in Australia. So if you're planning on travelling to Australia at any time and you like to have a little bit of a drink or two, then this is the video for you. If you haven't already subscribed to this channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I do some fun videos like this one, but I also do Australian accent tutorial videos as well. I mix it up a bit from time to time. And if you haven't already, subscribers and non-subscribers alike, go ahead and ring that bell. Then you'll be notified every time I put out a new video or if I have some new content coming your way. So let's have a chat about alcohol and drinking culture in Australia versus America or wherever it is that you live. I'm sure that there's a lot of differences, just in general. Now, there's certainly more things on this topic than I have prepared for this video, but I just wanted to touch on a few little things that you might not know. So let's get right into it. Tip number one, you need to know this. If you are planning a holiday in Australia and you like to drink, you need to know that alcohol is expensive. It is likely to be one of the things you spend the most money on if you like to have a drink or two at the end of the day. Just to give you an example, the last time we went, my husband likes to drink whiskey and he was horrified to see that a bottle of whiskey that here would cost him about $15 was closer to, I think it was like $56 in Australia, upwards of $50. So keep that in mind. If you go out, however, the cost of drinking if you go to a pub or a bar, it might not be too bad, but just generally, the reason alcohol is so expensive is because it's so heavily taxed. The last time I was there, I went into the bottle-o and bought some beer, and the guy who sold it to me informed me that the Australian beer that I was buying is actually cheaper to buy in the US than it is in Australia. And that's because of the incredibly high tax on alcohol within Australia. So that's why it's so expensive. Now, if you want something cheap, get a bag of goon. You can get wine in a box. Inside the box, it's actually held in like a bladder, a bag, and it's called goon. It's disgusting. It's what high school kids drink because no one has any money. Little tip for you, don't drink goon, it's gross. Number two on this list is that the standard shot size is slightly smaller compared to the USA. The standard shot is 30 mils, which is about 1.5 ounces of alcohol. In the US, it's actually about 45 mils. So if you're ordering cocktails or mixed drinks, those drinks are not going to be as strong as they would be if you usually drink in the United States. Now you might be thinking, that's all right. I'm a really friendly person. Bartenders usually like me. They'll just give me a little bit extra. Bow. That won't happen in Australia because number three is there is no free pouring. It's illegal to free pour in Australia. So if you don't know, free pouring is where you just kind of eyeball it and guess, well, not guess, educated guess if you're a qualified bartender. In Australia, there is a measuring doodad on the top of every bottle. It measures 30 mils exactly. So even if you're really nice to the bartender, even if the bartender's your bestie, you probably won't get any more than the standard 30 mils unless you ask for a double and you pay for it because it's not legal. This is also true for any type of drink that you might buy. Wine glasses will have a line on them that shows one standard drink. And the reason for this is so that people really know for sure exactly how much they are drinking. And then they don't get too out of control. Now, if you order a bottle or something like that, you can check on the label and it will tell you how many standard drinks are in that bottle, whether it's 1 or 1.5, so that you know exactly how much you're drinking. Now, you might be a little bit discouraged with everything I've told you so far. But don't worry, there's a happy bit, and that is number 4. There is no tipping in Australia.
What?
Tipping culture is not a thing, and that's because the minimum wage is quite high within the hospitality industry. Bartenders generally make at least $22 to $25 an hour, sometimes more. So you don't have to tip. If you go to the pub and you order a drink, however much that drink is, that is what you pay, and you don't need to tip your bartender, your server, the busboy. You don't need to tip anyone, so you'll save a little bit of money there. Number 5, I think, is something that a lot of people are already aware of, and that is the legal drinking age within Australia, which is 18. It is younger than the 21 of the USA. The saying goes, if you're old enough to die for your country, you're old enough for a beer. I have to say I agree with that statement. I think that 21 is a ridiculous age limit for drinking. What I've found, and this is just my observation, within Australia, I mean, most people will say 18-year-olds are still children. They're not, they're adults. So even if they don't always act like it, but essentially when they are allowed to do all the things at 18, they get a lot of the rubbish out of their system, so that by the time they're 21, they are actually acting like adults most of the time. Without being disrespectful, I was a little bit surprised at the lack of maturity within the 21, 22-year-old age group when I first moved to the United States. I don't know if that's because I'm in Los Angeles and it's a big party city, I'm not sure. But what I did notice was that generally, very general term, people within LA tend to treat 21 and 22-year-olds like they're children, which encourages them to act that way. In Australia, 18-year-olds, everyone knows they're going to be a bit silly because they're very, very young. But because they're allowed to drink, they're allowed to do anything that adults are allowed to do, by the time they're 21, 22 years old, they've pretty much got it together. So that's a very general statement. I'm sure we all know that 22-year-old who's a bit of a dum-dum. Anyway, just my observation. Sorry if you're 21 or 22 and you happen to be American. I'm sure that you're not one of the immature ones. All right, let's look at beer. Now, full disclosure, I'm not a beer drinker, but I have been in many a pub in Australia, so I know a little bit about it. What I want to look at here is how to order a beer. And it does differ a bit from state to state, but basically, let's just look at the sizes. Lots of different beer flavors. Flavors? Brands? But let's just look at the sizes. So, the smallest that you can get is generally called a pony, and it's only a teeny weeny one, it's 140 mils. The next size up is 200 mils, and that will either be called a 7 or a glass. The next size up from that is a more popular size, which is 285 mils, a midi, a pot, a 10, a handle, or in South Australia, it'll be called a schooner. Now, this gets a bit confusing here. Good old South Australia confuses everybody with this, because the next size up from there is the 425 mil, which in most states is called a schooner, but in good old South Australia, we call it a pint. And then the biggest size, a large, if you will, is 570 mils, and everyone calls that a pint, apart from South Australia, who call it an imperial pint. Confused? Sorry. Anyway, wherever you're traveling, it's really okay if you just order a small, a medium, or a large, and if you don't want to do that, just order a bottle, because every pub has those. Number 7, while we're on the topic of beer, the term light beer has a different meaning in Australia than it does in the US. In the US, the term light beer refers to the calories or the flavour. In Australia, it actually refers to the amount of alcohol that's in that drink. So a light beer in Australia will only have 2 to 3% alcohol. The reason for that is if someone's driving, they can still drink socially at the pub and be responsible. Or if they want to slow down at the end of the night, then they can switch over to light beer and they won't get as smashed. The next important thing you need to know about beer in Australia, number 8, Foster's is not a popular Australian beer. I'm very sorry to all of my American and British friends who think that Foster's is Australian for beer. It's not. It's just really good marketing. I don't think I've ever seen Foster's served at a pub in Australia. I'm not even sure. I'm sure you can buy it. I just don't think it's easily accessible. The first time I saw Foster's served on tap in a pub was actually when I was in Scotland, and it's quite popular because everyone thinks it's an Australian beer, but it's not. There's other beers. Drink those. Number 9. This is another thing that's a bit different. I believe countries in Europe and also America are the same in this respect, where you can buy alcohol in a lot of different places. In Australia, they're very strict about who can and can't sell alcohol. The only place you can buy booze is at a shop specifically for selling alcohol. You cannot buy it at a pharmacy, at a servo, at a grocery. You can only buy it at what we call a bottle-o. That's the name of a liquor store. The great news, there are a lot of drive-through bottle-os. So if you're on your way to a barbecue and you want to pick up a bottle of something to take with you, you just drive through the local bottle-o. They are everywhere. Easiest thing ever. I miss it a lot, not having to get out of the car, just ordering through the window. Number 10, you'll find that a lot of pubs in Australia will have the word hotel or tavern at the end of it, also called ale houses. And it is confusing if someone says, oh, we're going to the such and such hotel. That means it's a pub. You're not actually going to a hotel bar, it's just a pub. The reason for this is that in Australia, up until the late 80s, the liquor laws in Australia forced establishments to provide rooms if they also serve alcohol. If somebody comes into your establishment and has too much to drink, that establishment needs to be able to provide somewhere for them to stay overnight for safety reasons.
Hey, let's get smashed tonight.
So this was liquor laws within Australia up until the late 80s. So all of those places, it's not that long ago, all those places still have the name hotel or tavern in their title. So that brings me, speaking of overnight stay, because you get too wasted, that brings me to number 11. And this is a bit of a bonus one for you today. Please, please, please do not drink and drive. I'll say that as a personal request because I hate it, but I will also say that to save you a lot of money. The legal limit in Australia is less than in the US. It's actually 0.05. A lot less than the US, which I think is 0.08. In Australia, we have what we call booze buses. It will be a bus that is equipped with all of the tests to check if someone is intoxicated. And now they're also, it's what you might call a DUI unit. They test for all the drugs, they test for all the booze, and essentially, if you're driving between a particular time, or on a public holiday, or on a Sunday afternoon, wherever you are, there will be random breath testing and you won't be able to avoid it. You'll be driving along and you'll get ushered into a lane, you'll have to slow down, there'll be police everywhere, and then you have to blow into a breathalyzer unit to test if you are over the limit. And if you are, the fines are extortionate, you can lose your license, you can get locked up. Just don't risk it. Don't do it. Drink light beer. Read the label on the bottle. Know if you're drinking 1.5 standard drinks or just one. We're very, very serious about our drunk drivers in Australia. As the saying goes, drink drive, you're a bloody idiot. It was actually the ad slogan. I didn't make it up. That's all I've got for you on drinking in Australia. I hope this has been enlightening. Again, if you are planning a trip to Australia, leave me a comment. Let me know what you like to drink. I'm interested in those things. I read all of my comments, so if you have any questions, go ahead and jot them down below. And please give this video a thumbs up. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you later. Bye!
If you drink and drive, you're a bloody idiot.